Thank goodness it's Friday. Hero is coming at you in 3, 2, 1.
Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Evazine. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off. Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Evazine. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off.
Hello, everybody. This is Ryan, the original outlaw of the airwaves, broadcasting from a bunker in Shapeshifter Territory. We'll do our best to bring you what's going on. And the guest today, well, wow, none other than author, lecturer, and investigator of ancient civilizations, past catastrophes, and the paranormal, James Keenan. And I hope to also discuss his new book, which is available on Amazon, I believe, today. I purchased an ebook copy. I believe the hardcover copy is coming soon. I'll probably get both because it's pretty awesome. I will definitely give it to my kids. And we'll try to touch base on that. But he is very passionate, and I just love talking with him about everything going on and the belief systems around the cultures that tend to congregate in these areas of high strangeness. If you haven't checked out heroparanormal.com, please do. Also, you can download quickly and easily at heroparanormal.podbean.com. And without further ado, Mr. James Keenan, words don't describe the passion Mr. Keenan has for the scientific aspects surrounding the high strangeness encountered in northeastern Utah in Shapeshifter Territory, the Uinta Basin. And it comes as no surprise to seasoned listeners and patrons and other aficionados that Mr. Keenan decided to incorporate Roosevelt, Utah, in the Uinta Basin of northeastern Utah as the setting for, well, his new phenomenal book in his series, the UFO and an Alien series. James Keenan, welcome to Hero.
Hey, Ryan. Thanks for having me.
So I've got to ask a question because your passion is hard to ignore. You are very interested in the hard facts and the science around the high strangeness and phenomena encountered in this area of the state. What led you down this path and kind of got you interested?
Well, you know, there are areas in the world, and they're few and far between, where there seems to be, and I'm going to call it activity or phenomena, that takes place, highly unusual, unable to be documented most of the time, difficult to categorize. There's always a crossover between what people would consider paranormal and supernatural versus scientific study, meaning that, like for somebody like me that has a background heavily in archaeology and anthropology, it gives me the opportunity not just to follow the science, but also to follow, an atypical type of science or a fringe type that goes more into the anthropological study of things like the folklore and the myth. So, northeastern Utah, the Uinta Basin, is really one of 4 or 5 places in the world where you have just this crossover of ufology, cryptozoology, paranormal activity, possibilities even of ancient lost civilization or cultures having existed in the area, and then also, the possibilities of scientific issues like maybe a meteor strike at a larger level that affected, that part of the Colorado Plateau. So it's just a pleasure to have that opportunity to be able to study all the phenomena and the science at one time in a location such as the Uinta Basin, Space Wolf Research Center, and the Skinwalker Ranch area.
I couldn't agree more with you about like the anthropology, the culture behind it. And, you mentioned there were 4 or 5 areas that do this kind of thing. I know I don't want to jump to conclusions, but I would expect one to be in Arizona, if not 2. What areas are, those 4 or 5, if you had, you don't have to mention them if you don't want to, because I know how some of these magical areas are, but what areas or what states are these usually, do you find these in?
Sure, absolutely. So, obviously, whenever you talk about something like that, most people jump to the state that I live in, which is Arizona, which is absolutely true. You have this high, unusual amount of energy, people throw out that electromagnetic energy, but who knows really what it is, but it's in the Sedona area, in Bradshaw Mountains area. You have a lot of sightings of unusual activity that deals with cryptozoology. And then probably my biggest or most important thing that I like to track or follow up on is portals. And in the sense, what those could be. We could spend hours talking about it, but Sedona is obviously one of those areas, just like Fort Duchesne, Roosevelt, Knighton area in northeastern Utah. You also have several locations in Mexico, Chihuacan, Mexico, which is just south of Zihuatanejo, which is just incredible. Very few people know about it. It's on the west coast. They're just now unearthing a city that's 10 square miles in size. As a matter of fact, only 1%, a single pyramid has been unearthed and is being excavated. Then you have another area location, which is the northern United Kingdom in the Scotland area. There are several areas there. But for me, the opportunity to be able to continuously go back and investigate, research, both from a pseudo archaeological standpoint and a scientific standpoint. The easiest for me are northeastern Utah and here in the Arizona area.
And Arizona is so magical. That Bradshaw Ranch, Sedona area, it's a magical area. I would describe the energy as different, but equal in potency. But what are your thoughts from like a cultural? We have similar things going on in both states. I know as human beings we always try to find similarities and correlate, but there could be a lot more to it to that. Have you talked to the local culture there and what they believe the history is?
Yeah, so both in Utah and Arizona, you have a high indigenous population, Native American, where their culture, their belief system is completely different than what we are used to from Western Europe, Western civilization. They're more open to the supernatural and paranormal. As a matter of fact, to them, it's not even considered that a lot of the time. It's just normal belief system. So when you talk to the Navajo or the Ute, the Navajo up in the northeast portion of Arizona, they're very open to letting you know that, they fully believe that there were such things as giants, red-headed giants that were cannibals that used to roam the Southwest. They're documented in their folklore, which is their oral traditions, and they're documented in petroglyphs through Utah, through Nevada, through Arizona, even through a small portion maybe of the Chumash Indian area in California. And in order to get a better understanding of what I'm looking for, you have to follow, and you're aware of that, you've done it too, you have to follow that Native American aspect of it because it's embedded in really what seems to be happening and going on, or at least embedded in a portion of the phenomena, because I don't believe all the phenomena is one thing. I believe there's separate issues taking place at one time, and whether that draws from energy or something in the ground that we're just not quite aware of, it allows for all of this to take place at once.
The interesting thing that the belief systems that you mention are so important, because I was having the thought today how difficult it's becoming when you're searching for those members of particular tribes with ancestral heritage there and what the vocal tradition is. And it usually corresponds with, like you said, the petroglyphs. Thank goodness for the McConkey Ranch and the fact that they share that with the public. It's very real, that red-headed giant issue. And following the Native American aspect, what did you encounter, if anything, Mr. Keenan, in Arizona, in the Sedona area?
Sure, absolutely. So what we have to first remember is that most of the petroglyphs that are in and around the Arizona-Utah area are from cultures and civilizations that we've named them only based upon sites that they've lived at. We're not really sure who they are and where they went. When you look at the Navajo, they're more recent. The Navajo have been here, but there's other Native American tribes that are more recent to the area that hadn't been here for too long. You have these cultures like the Hohokam here in Arizona, where they were responsible for a large part of the petroglyphs, and up in Utah, the Fremont culture, and we're just not quite sure who they were, where they came from, where they went. So even talking to the Native Americans that are currently here, still some of what is meant in the petroglyphs or the pictographs isn't quite understood by the current indigenous people. And, all the time, anthropology is a social science. So a lot of what scientists want you to believe would be the, concrete, and it has to be real. It's not. It's subjective. It's, a subjective feel based upon what they research, what most likely could be an answer as to what a petroglyph or a pictograph represents. But when you do speak to the Native Americans, at least you're getting a better understanding, because obviously those lineages may very well have been affected or have crossed at some point together. So portions of what are still on the rock art are understood. And it's just a matter of piecing together the rock art as a whole, like you said at McConkey Ranch. It's incredible when you traverse the area, because it's not just in one location, as you very well know. It's all over the place. Some are located 40, 50 feet up on a hillside. Some of the best is all the way up at the top. And it's incredible to hear what the Native Americans believe it is versus what some anthropologist or archaeologist is going to tell you from a university.
Very important, in my opinion, too, because these belief systems are open to things that our current scientific community might be closed off to. And the Hohokam and the Fremont, and there's other cultures like in Chaco Canyon, there was disappearances of cultures there as well. Is this somewhat incorporated with, these lights in the sky and these shapeshifters on the ground?
Well, when you look into their folklore, their oral tradition, there's definitely what they call or consider star people, which they would consider their ancestors, or say are their ancestors, where they come from. So there's a direct connection according to them, and like you said, not just here in the Southwest, but in Mexico as well, that these star people, whoever they were, have a connection in their lineage or their ancestry that they believe. And also, what we in Western culture would say is paranormal or supernatural, like you had said, shape-shifting, is not considered paranormal or supernatural to them. It's considered a part of their daily cultural beliefs, something that, isn't made fun of like a lot of people do in Western culture, or especially in the United States. And you have to consider the fact, too, that these indigenous cultures, in some way, shape, or form, had a connection together, whether it's DNA and lineage or just having traded. We're now finding that this trade system traversed thousands of miles in between what's currently the United States and Central America. And we look at the Maya, in Mexico, but, you got to look even further than that. We've only known about the Olmec for 40, 45 years. Before then, they didn't exist. Now we're starting to come across this proto-Olmec society that outdates the Olmec. And I always tell people, we only know 5% or less of the past of these civilizations. Everything else is still buried under our feet. And a great example is Sumerian. Currently, we don't realize, it seems like it's natural that we've known about Sumer and the Sumerian culture forever. But before 1850, they didn't exist. We didn't know anything about them. And now it's just a daily thought that, that's where we originate from. So going forward, what are we going to uncover? And are we going to find out or uncover that these more ancient societies and cultures and civilizations that more than likely were far more advanced and possibly might have had a connection that's extraterrestrial or interdimensional? You can name it. And what are we going to find here in the near future and later down the line? So what we believe today or think is hogwash, could turn out to be a legitimate belief and a daily part of science in 50 years.
Exactly. And it kind of correlates with that Chaco Canyon stuff that I mentioned as well, where, they find this place, the people are missing, this culture's gone. They have these interesting caverns that seemingly have information that could be of value. And sure as heck, the whole area is shut down by government archaeologists. But the interesting value is that there was some mention of I believe it was the wing makers inside the caverns. And lo and behold, there was an organization. And when this government organization called and said, what is this? Is this, anything about this? They said, yeah, it's probably us, like in a different dimension or incarnation. And, these religious aspects could in a way be technology that we have completely ignored. I think these belief systems without stigma, like the Native American system, a connection to the earth and these tricksters encountered, which are here 1 second and gone the next, are fairly elemental, I would guess, in nature, at least in my opinion, or in my encounters, but however brief. Do you think that this Native American culture typically is more open and they have a connection with the earth, and a lot of the things that are being encountered, which are here 1 second and gone the next, these tricksters, if you will, especially on the ground, are elemental in nature and have a connection to the earth as well? Is this possibly where some of the keys to unlocking this mystery are held, in your opinion?
I guess there's always a possibility, absolutely like what you said, the Native Americans have an understanding that goes in a different direction than what Western science does. And there's obviously something in play, when we're discussing like northeastern Utah and these tricksters or whatever it is, and whatever they are, wherever they come from. There's a possibility, yes, absolutely, of learning and finding out, maybe through a course of scientific data, collecting data points and being more open and more focused to other possibilities like elemental possibilities or extraterrestrial. And, remember too, when I'm talking extraterrestrial, it doesn't have to be aliens or something of that nature. It could be technology that's still out there from lost civilizations or ancient cultures. I, in my lectures, continuously tell people that there were civilizations on this planet 130,000 years ago, maybe even several 100 million years ago, that had far more advanced technology than we have. Were they human? Possible. Were they other? Possible as well. But there's technology. I mean, we're so young at this course. We currently only have an understanding and historical data going back several thousand years. So what have we lost? And where have those people gone, if any of them survived, is an absolute possibility. And then, you have to get into what we're not quite aware of yet, and we're only getting little glimmers of, like, interdimensionality, through possibility of portal use. We saw recently on a television show that this aerial phenomena that's taking place above Fort Duchesne and Mighton has this ability to go in and out of somewhere other than our third dimension instantly, and it was captured on video. So in my lectures that I've been giving since last June, I heavily spoke about the point that there are certain petroglyphs in Dinosaur National Monument that showed this aerial phenomena taking place, and that it was transmitting outward out of the planet. And it's there, captured by the indigenous people, which are labeled as Fremont or Barrier Canyon. And those, what they saw is being seen now. So it's just a matter, I believe, of us learning more in regards to is what we are seeing now. Is it technology? Is it artificial intelligence? There's an absolute possibility, right? We're just in our infancy of learning about nanotechnology and other types of energy that are not hydrocarbons, based upon fossil fuels of that nature. So hopefully, within your lifetime and mine, we get to advance a little bit more as to the understanding as to what's taking place here in the Southwest of the United States.
I am so glad that you brought up the nanotechnology, because one of my most intriguing sightings, I'll just come out and say it, was it took place where something, it seemed, was forming, it's going to sound crazy, but forming out of this dark particulate, or like a swarm of nanotechnology, or a swarm of what you would consider gnats or a dark mist. And it became something very real in perception to myself and another researcher who's also named Ryan. And, the interesting thing is, you're sitting there wondering, okay, are we both seeing something that's not real? Are we seeing something that is real? And, it did whatever it did and dematerialized in the same way. I think nanotechnology may be a possible explanation for what we are otherwise considering paranormal magic or I mean, like you said, the line between ritual magic, cultural inherent connection to the earth, and science and technology can be very blurred and gray.
Exactly, and think about just the things that have been written in books based upon skinwalkers and the Uinta Basin. Think about that people have shot at these creatures that suddenly appeared out of nowhere, and they just look at them like nothing happened. Well, what does that sound like to you and me? That sounds like artificial intelligence, artificial technology, robotics, shape-shifting. If you think of shape-shifting from an engineer's aspect, we're talking about the ability to cloak. We're talking about maybe the ability to, instead of physically shift, maybe it's the ability to warp or cause a change in what others visually see. So, like you said, with ritual magic, what we considered magic 200 years, we now understand as technology, and now for us, it's just normal basic science. So, where we're going to go in the future, and what we're going to see in the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years may be something of a lost advanced culture or civilization that somebody or something found. I always tell people, think about the priest caste in the Maya or in ancient Egypt. Maybe they were aware of or found ancient technology that was kept within a certain caste group in order to have power and authority over the rest of the population. So there's always these possibilities. Like you said, what's paranormal today may just be science or be known knowledge tomorrow.
Yeah, and you said something very important, Mr. Keenan, about these glimmers, or they're like glimpses, which is really these encounters a lot of times are spectacles that seem to just be almost like a peer. You're peering into another world for just a matter of moments, and you wonder what it is that makes that possible. Is this Earth cursed? Is it magical? Is it both? Could it be? I heard a wonderful recently, without giving too much into it, a wonderful idea that this is all subterranean as well, from another investigator, and there seems to be a lot more validity going in that direction.
Yeah, there's definitely, even in the petroglyphs, it shows that there's something underground communicating with something above ground, especially more than likely above the mesa that's just south of Fort Duchesne. And then whatever is in the aerial is then transmitting outward. It's in the rock art. And what's underground or underneath is a good question, but think about the fact that there was a lot of gilsonite mining that's been going on since around the late 1800s, and these gilsonite mines, gilsonite in and of itself is this very unique product, and it can only be found in several places in the whole world, and the best gilsonite is there on the Uinta Basin. But as we were mining and creating all this devastation, what did we come across or come upon, and could we have accidentally activated something again or awoken something? There are other ranches in the area north of Skinwalker Ranch that look to have what may very well be ancient mines that somebody a long time ago was mining. And it's incredible to think that maybe we aren't the first technologically advanced civilization here, especially in that area, and to find anomalies of this nature makes you really stop and, scratch your head and wonder what's underground. And if we're talking about maybe, past catastrophic events, what could have been in that location? There was the Utah Lake, it was a massive body of water there. What was in it, what was around it, who was around it, who was living there, So there are many, many possibilities, and subterranean is absolutely a possibility. And even on a recent television show, they came up with GPR anomalies under the ground that showed the possibility of something below their feet. And like I said earlier, we've only uncovered 5% or less of what's here. And that other 95% is still underneath our feet waiting to be discovered.
It would make sense from let's think about it, like where would we go? If there was a catastrophic event in our time, that is where we would head, is underground into bunkers, into caves, into tunnel systems. And it would be possible. I don't know why it wouldn't. I do think that a lot of the verbiage in these ancient cultures, it's hard to ignore. It isn't like it could be underground or it might be. No, it's under there. It's under there. And I want to bring up your book just so everybody is sure to get it. It's called The Shapeshifter Scare, the UFO and an Alien series by James Keenan. What I liked about this book is in northeastern Utah, which is really cool, and it brings up a lot of the topics we're mentioning, but it's aimed at a younger crowd, which is really tough to do nowadays. I know Tom DeLonge is trying. I think you kind of nailed it, though, in that same way. These elemental aspects, and this giant lake that you're mentioning, a very strange thing happened recently at a property I own in this area. Some lightning struck. There was some loss of material, an RV, other things. Not to get into that, but the interesting thing is the ground underneath, as debris was being cleared and that, you realize that a lot of it is made up of, there's shells galore. There are arrowheads everywhere, shells galore. So this could have been a very interesting area.
It's interesting too, and I'll go over both things. Like definitely with the children. My first book, The UFO and an Alien, went into ufology. Now it goes into shape-shifting and Native American culture, and then the third and final series will be with cryptozoology and Bigfoot. But that was to introduce those ages 9 to 13 into that belief system, be it ufology, paranormal, supernatural, and to give them not just the terminology, but the understanding of the possibilities, and to, open up their imagination to hopefully discovering that science and paranormal, which is just what we don't understand yet, is really one and the same. At some point, paranormal may be our science. And then to also introduce, the kids to moral dilemmas and how to overcome them. And then to go to the second part of what you were discussing. Yeah, absolutely. So there was this fire, unfortunately, and at the research center, the whole building was lost. And I happened to be out there 5 or 6 weeks earlier, and I discovered magnetic differential anomalies feet from where that fire was. And we were talking, we're talking about these incredible differences in the magnetic field of the Earth. And I went over 80 data points, and there were only 3 of these on the Uinta Basin. And crazy, they're in a row. One happens to be there at the research center, and it's only a 6-inch in diameter area. And then the other 2 are approximately 2 miles away, straight as an arrow. And then we have this show on one of the channels recently that had this model done by a physicist showing these light anomalies coming up out of the ground of energy. Well, that would match perfectly with what I found with this proton magnetometer and these magnetic differences. And we're talking about huge changes in milligauss readings. So you got to ask yourself, what the hell is going on? What is the cause of this magnetic difference? And if there is obviously a magnetic difference, there could be electrical, and then, together an electromagnetic shift. And with the lakes having been there, and who knows about past cultures and civilizations, something subterranean underground is a good possibility as to at least what the energy source is for this unknown phenomena taking place in and around Skinwalker Ranch, around Mighton, around Roosevelt, and around Fort Duchesne and the Ute Reservation.
You brought up these interesting and I believe somewhat important sandstone ridgelines. I think they are very important. Some of the most amazing things I've seen are in proximity, if not on, ridges. I mean, the things I've seen to not go too crazy and wild, but I've seen and I was with another researcher who's very respected, what can only be described as almost like a screen of green light coming down. And I hate to say from the heavens, but there was no point of origin. So there was no, you weren't looking at like a helicopter projecting a hologram onto the ground with laser beams, or, you know what I mean? You, as a human being, you would think that we would be able to distinguish between something like that, but it seemed like kind of a Skynet coming down on part of this sandstone. And it's a very long ridgeline, spans miles and miles and miles and miles. The interesting thing from a Native American aspect is that this is also very fertile ground. The water tends to follow this area. And do you think the water today has something to do with it, with the water baby phenomenon and other things of that nature?
Personally, I have not investigated anything having to do with the water. Now, I've done an extensive deep dive into the historical nature and details of the area, and I have found some very interesting phenomena taking place with the water in and around the area. Unfortunately, because of an NDA that I have, I'm unable to go into more detail, but there are definitely aspects of certain physical areas in that area that are doing something. And if we're talking about energy, we got to look at what are good conductors. And you're talking about things like water. You're talking about a product, gilsonite, which is incredible at moving energy along. You're talking about the makeup of that area is sandstone that is very high in quartz. It's in that exact area, it's about 40 to 60% quartz. So you have to also consider this piezoelectric possibility of energizing the area with that much quartz and gilsonite together. There's hydrocarbon, massive amounts underground. As a matter of fact, there's a working well just southwest of Skinwalker Ranch on another rancher's property. So you got to look at what's under there. And then you've got to also look at this mesa. It seems that the mesa that is south of Fort Duchesne, north of Skinwalker Ranch, has a lot of energy and seems to many times be the focal point of what's going on. Then you have to consider that you have these huge, massive 500,000 plus kilowatt lines go up across that area. And those lines aren't always cleaned, so they're constantly tracking, and they're putting more energy out, more output into that area. So what are we charging? Like you said, maybe through the water, maybe it's carrying through there, but we have this highly energized area with a lot of strains happening. And people tell me, they're like, come on, you're saying that all this is happening. Until you go there and experience it, you just really won't understand. You can talk to a lot of people in the area, and they all seem to have some type of story. They may not want to tell it in public, but a lot of like to tell me, privately, what their experiences were. And then you get a lot of people that refuse to tell you, or they say, no, there's nothing going on. But then you dive deeper into their personal history, and you find out that it's possibly because of what religion they belong to and how strong this religion is in that area, that it may be them trying to stick to that religious belief, and they don't want to let people know what has happened or what they've seen take place. So there's a lot going on. There seems to be a lot of different data points coming together that are helping create the phenomena. And again, I always tell people it's not a single phenomenon. There seems to be multiple things that may very well not have anything to do with one or the other, but they're taking place at the same time because of what is in or below the ground there, or maybe it's a combination of what's available underground and above ground.
I think there is a little bit of both. The fact that this huge power line is scarring this magical area in and of itself, in my personal opinion, I can't agree enough with you. I see billions of dollars being spent in Europe on this super collider. And to be honest with you, I think we just have a naturally possibly occurring one of one shape or another taking place. I don't want to call it dark matter, but what we're seeing are things that are godly with a small g. In your encounters, or just like you said, magic in the area, when you've encountered the area or entered the area, what are the feelings you get and what are the thoughts you have about that?
So I try to do a bit of both. I like to go in and collect a lot of science, hard science data points that I can present. So the technology that I use are things like a proton magnetometer, ground penetrating radar, long distance sensing radar, things of that nature. And it's interesting because sometimes a perfectly good piece of equipment malfunctions, and there should be no reason for it. It's never malfunctioned before. And I know people hear this time and time again on television, and they're like, come on, the cameras are rolling, so why is it that just that piece of equipment? I don't know how to explain it. I don't know. But is there a possibility, like you're saying, that there's some type of intelligence there that's manipulating technology that can understand and maybe even foresee future events or understand or hear what people are thinking? I don't know. I mean, you got to think that there may even be other possibilities if we're talking about a location that has interdimensional capability. Well, why does that not also include space and time? So maybe we're looking at something that's capable of traversing all time at once. So it already knows what is going to happen or what happened or what's happening at the moment. These portals, when you talk about a portal, what are we discussing? Are we talking about something that's capable of taking us from point A to point B based upon an area of latitude? That's very capable. Or is it interplanetary? planetary? Are we traveling from one planet to another? Or is it interdimensional? Or is it a concept of changing space and time? If you're talking about ether, dark matter, what is it? What are its capabilities? And if there is some other type of being or technology that has the ability to kind of already use the technology we're just not aware of that's there, maybe it's capable of manipulating that, or maybe it already is embedded in this timeline to the point where it knows what you're going to do, or it just wants to mess with you. So the cameras are still rolling, the cameras are able to film the person, but the person can't use a drone that they're trying to fly or turn on the GPR. And it gets frustrating. You go out there with fresh batteries or something you just fully charged and it's completely dead, but then you turn on your cell phone and it's fine. But, 2 seconds later you want to videotape something and your phone starts acting up and starts calling random people. So there's many possibilities. Have I experienced it personally? Yes. I've experienced my technology going haywire for no good reason. And I've even experienced to where I'm standing on a specific data point that I've collected where there's a magnetic anomaly. I walk 10 feet away and my GPS suddenly starts working fine again. All the systems come back online. I walk back to that area, and you and I know I flagged these areas. There are flags in the ground to where the anomalies were located, and then everything starts acting up again. So it's very interesting. It's an interesting area.
I think it's so neat that water may be involved in some way, shape, or form. You find that all the time, even back east with the native cultures in the Susquehanna River Valley of Pennsylvania and other areas where this magic is explained through these river valleys and belief systems. But interdimensional poltergeists traveling through wormholes into our reality. And the culture, though, does a good job, like you mentioned, of these open-minded, and I'm blessed or cursed that I'm very omnitheistic the way I was brought up. So when you witness them, it doesn't come as a shocker. It doesn't come as and I think it's interesting the way you've aimed this at kids, you're possibly leaving the seeds for the younger generation to think in a way that is more open, very necessary to the huge occurrences, both scientific and otherwise, that we may be facing. And I think that's very noble, James. Where can listeners and others kind of keep up with what you're doing, what you got going on? I'm fascinated by it, and I think it's just great.
Sure. So I'm on Facebook under James Keenan. Also, under my original book, I have Dark Shadows and Catastrophe on Facebook. And also it's under Dark Shadows and Catastrophe on Instagram. On Amazon, you can purchase my books. And I also have an author page that I update every now and then. And my books can be purchased at Amazon.com or at Barnes & Noble. And the newest book, as a matter of fact, just became available today at Barnes & Noble. It became available on ebook on Amazon, and it should be ready on paperback tomorrow or Monday via Amazon. The Shapeshifter Scare.
Yeah, it's a great book. I nailed the e-copy, and I will probably nail the hardcover as well, because that's just a kind of a hairpin I am. I'm weird. But great stuff, James. Thank you so much, sir. And I look forward to talking to you in the future, hopefully very soon. Be blessed, and keep doing what you're doing, my man.
Hey, Ryan, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me again.
Wow, what a guy. Such a nice guy, and he knows his stuff. Roll on over to Amazon and pick up a copy of The Shapeshifter Scare by James Keenan. Go over to Hero Paranormal. Check out what we have going on there. And heroparanormal.podbean.com. You can download us quicker there. Until next time, keep your eyes to the skies. Feet on the ground, but don't forget to take a look around.
Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Visine. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off. Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Visine. Blast